Craig and Stephen Duncan run several podcasts, including BTN, Beside the Norm, and All That Dope Shit, which is about hip-hop, I think. So they're used to interviewing all sorts of people from all walks of life, from politics to rap music. But today, we're reversing the usual way of things. I'm interviewing the interviewers. Reason being, these guys have both suffered and survived COVID. So this interview will be about that experience. So I'm Bill Mair, but that doesn't really matter because this is about these two guys. Obviously, as we've never done this kind of reverse experience podcast before, you'd expect that we'd have rehearsed it, but we don't do things like that. So we're just going to get straight into it. Craig and Stephen, how are you doing?
We're doing fantastic. We slept in the day.
Good.
And so we've just not long woken up. We got up about an hour ago, had some toast, and now we're ready to roll.
One of the most annoying things ever is I was looking forward so much to a coffee, but I forgot to get coffee. So we're on Vimto and water. We're fueled by Vimto and water.
Aye.
Oh, Vimto, that'll do the trick. Yeah, it's got lots of E numbers in it, I believe. So
it's a lot of shite. Aye. Brilliant. I love it.
Yeah. So stimulants, that's what you want. I remember when my little girl was little, we had to look out for E110, I think it was, and E113, I think it was. It was a yellow food colouring, red food colouring that made kids like hyperactive. And so you get them in fish fingers, the red and the yellow, to get your orange colour on your fish fingers. So if you're looking for something as a wee pick-me-up, look for your E numbers on the back, E110, and the other one that I'm a bit shady on.
I think
so.
How have you been the last week? I also just have a fish finger, right? There you go. How have you been the last week, both of you?
Been not too bad the last week. Like I noticed, and we'll get into this in a bit more depth in a wee while. But I have noticed just in the past few weeks that after COVID, I've been getting a lot more wheezy. So I've been sitting wheezy. Aye, basically just sitting, and you can hear it sometimes coming in. Not so much today, but I have noticed that happening.
I gave you one of my extra inhalers, and you only seem to have used it once.
I only used it once, but
that day that you needed it, you really needed it.
Oh yeah, it was bad.
It was very, very audible.
So I have noticed that a bit in my, the inside starting to fail.
Right, you did in a week.
In a small sense, sort of thing.
I'm giving them 6 months for the most.
That'll work. So for each of you, how long ago was it that you had COVID, that you kind of started having it and kind of stopped having it? Although with long COVID, I guess, when you stopped having it.
I will get the exact.
So how long ago when you both started?
Right. So
I will try and get the exact date.
I'll start telling the story, basically what happened, and then Craig could get the actual dates for you. So what seems to have happened is we got to the point of getting a bit kind of overconfident when we were outside, and I was basically the one that got sent to the shops and stuff like that. Craig has underlying issues like asthma and stuff like that,
and obesity.
Obesity and stuff like that. I'm no far off it myself, but just slightly healthier. So I was the one sort of going to the shops and stuff like that, and we got definitely a bit more like.
I mean, we had like the hand gel in the car and stuff, but at that point it was just, we'll just nip out, we'll nip back in again, it'll be fine. And then just, I didn't do my hands that time, didn't do this.
Because there was no cases coming up in Kerry a lot of the time as well. We were just sort of getting to the point of where we were like, this probably isn't going to reach here for some reason. For some reason we had that in our head. So I happened to go into a shop I hadn't been in since the beginning of March. It's a shop we rarely go into because it's quite expensive compared to the sort of other shops around about here. So we hadn't been in that shop since March, so this would have been, what date?
I think it was around either the 16th of October or the 19th of October.
Right, so it seems like we went into that shop at that time, because we actually went into 3 shops at that time.
You're about to ruin an air question, so stop there.
Okay. That's all right. Okay. But just before you do, I'll just give some context. That was about the 16th of October, and we're talking today on the 14th of December. Yeah. So that's basically, as we 4 months ago, just to give some context. And also, just before we carry on as well, I should have said, Craig and Stephen are brothers, and they live in the same house.
Mhm.
And Kenneway is a fairly small village.
Yeah,
And
there's
it's
about
about
3,000 people.
I don't know, maybe 5-6 miles away from the nearest kind of decent sized town. So it's a wee enclosed community,
Mhm.
and that's probably why Stephen's saying that he thought, well, it won't come here. We're an isolated hamlet, So
Yeah.
carry on.
That's it.
So it seems that we got it on the 16th or the 19th, but we didn't get tested until the 27th.
Mhm.
So we
Right.
think we had it for maybe 2 weeks before we got tested, maybe a week and a half actually, it seems. But I didn't get sick until the Wednesday, which was the 21st of October. And
Right.
the Thursday was my worst day, which was the 22nd. That was the day where I thought I was going to faint, where I couldn't get out of my bed, I couldn't stop coughing, I couldn't breathe. That was easily the worst day, because you came up and gave me, what was it, paracetamol or ibuprofen or something.
I'm not sure where to jump in because you said I might ruin the next
Just
question.
didn't say how we got it.
All right, that's fine. No, because I realised I had the symptoms the day before.
Yeah.
The day before that you mentioned that you had symptoms.
Aye.
Just at a lower level because I was smoking at the time. So I was already sort of naturally like coughing a lot due to the smoking, and that's another thing that's kind of changed, weirdly enough.
There's apparently, because we interviewed an epidemiologist a couple of weeks ago, and
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
So as you said in your document to us, we're basically experts at this point, and
That's right.
so one of the things that we learned was that, actually I don't think it was for her, but I just happened to remember reading this, that smoking isn't actually one of the big fears for COVID. In some cases, smokers do better, and I don't know why that is, but apparently that's a thing.
Yeah, well, there's a thing, right? Because I smoked from when I was 14. I started smoking when I was 14 and smoked till I was about 30 or something like that. And I was fit as a fiddle. Still am, but all during those years I was. But the thing about smoking was, I think I've said this to you guys before, was I had childhood asthma up until the age of 14. Age of 14, I started smoking. Boom, no more asthma ever. And now I'm almost 60. Never had asthma since. I've stopped smoking though. So often wonder. And then people say, asthma comes in 7-year cycles. I don't think it was the smoking that stopped it. And I say, you know what? Which sounds more like a superstitious old wives' tale? Asthma comes in 7-year cycles, or smoking could actually, because smoking physically affects your tubes and your lungs and all that sort of stuff. It actually has a physical effect. Which of that sounds more like something you just made up or your granny told you?
Yeah,
But
I don't
anyway,
know where they get this.
so that's interesting, yeah.
All those old wives' tales usually have like a specific set of like a time period. Like asthma just decides after 7 years.
I mean, folk do get rid of childhood asthma, and it tends to be in the teenage years. But
I know,
I don't
but
like eczema. Like I used to have
spoil it.
eczema, and I don't have it anymore.
Right.
It seemed to disappear when I was a young teenager person. I don't know
You
exactly
didn't
when it
start
disappeared.
smoking, no.
No, when I started smoking, no. I've had one fag in my life, and I didn't even inhale
All
it.
right.
So, and what was annoying is Stephen had moaned at me for smoking, and because I was at the youth club that he was a youth worker at, volunteer. He wasn't a real
Right.
youth worker at this point, and he had to come out and ask me for a lighter.
It was a great youth club.
Good.
All the youngins had lighters.
Yeah,
Aye.
sounds good.
So I
Stephen,
bought.
you said you. Sorry,
So
Stephen, you said you were smoking at the time. When
Yeah.
I'm interrupting you, Craig. Sorry, pal.
it's all right. It's all right. On you go. Mine's no interesting.
Aye. Sorry, it's not the job of the interviewer to interrupt. You said you were smoking at the time, Stephen. Does that mean you stopped smoking now, or does it mean you were having a cigarette at the time when you were wheezing and coughing?
Well, basically, I've seen. Is that about 2 months now?
Did you stop at COVID?
Yeah,
No, it's not.
It's been 2 months
It's been
since-
4 months since COVID.
2 months since COVID.
2 months.
October, November,
Right,
December.
So I stopped after the Paul Bogey. And, no, it was before that, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I think it must have been about a week before the Paul Bogey thing. So,
Well, the reason I don't know is because you never tell me when you stop.
well, this is a thing because I am notorious for stopping and starting constantly, and it's constantly been a thing like ever since I started smoking, trying to get off it, and like you really believe in your mind that you're really going to stop this time every single time, And you probably hear the same thing a lot for like heroin addicts and stuff. But
Yeah.
this time it seemed to scare me a wee bit because as I was like, just the taste, and I don't know how to explain this so well, but like I haven't enjoyed smoking since I had the COVIDs.
That's good.
For some reason.
That's not something you told me before. So the fact that COVID changed the taste and shit like that, that's a weird thing about COVID, by the way. Like, I've had chest infections and I think I've had flu twice, and I've had coronavirus before. I've had the cold before, right? And they're one thing, they're fine, right? But the change in taste and smell, that's fucking weird.
That's the most horrible thing. For two fat guys, for taste to disappear, the most important thing in your life.
The fact that it's like you didn't like smoke anymore.
Well, that was a big turning point for me, at least in that sense, because I definitely knew that, like, at least before, like I knew there was some sort of stress relief that came from having a cigarette, sort of thing. But the fact that I'm not enjoying the stress relief, it just wanted me to stop. And because I'd failed so many times in the last time, I told people, and they'd be like, "Cool, we'll see you in a week." So I thought, you know what, I'm not telling anybody. I'd never even told you. You live in the house. You never even noticed. I was about 3 weeks in, and you never even noticed. Yeah,
I think people assume because we stay in the same house. Like, even our cousin comes in, and if we're in separate rooms, he's like, "Why are you not in the same room? Why are you not just
like we should be 24 hours all in the same room, just all chilling and shit."
You're in your room, I'm in my room, and that's it. That's just how we live. We're never really in the same room together, unless we're doing a podcast.
We're not highly sociable, which is weird for us to do a podcast. I do understand that.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of the same. You can be social in small bursts if you. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like an hour a week. It's fine. It's great.
Turn on the charm, exactly. What we're going to do is, all right, that's okay. I was going to say we're going to go through the people's questions, but that first question is actually mine, so we're okay. But we'll give the name checks as we go along, so people's ears will prick up. So, like you say, you've already answered this question, but anyway, John A. Thompson from Fruki, and by the way, we've got questions from all over the place. So this is a very wide-reaching, a very wide-reading episode of BTN.
Awesome.
John A. Thompson, Fruki, how and where do you believe you were infected?
So,
that's the question I was going to run.
So again, we believe, after speaking to the contact tracer, that it was when we went to the co-op one day, and we believe that to either be the 16th or the 19th, which is either the Friday or the Monday.
And the only reason I think that is because there was a news story came out. Round about and that we weren't going to bother getting tested. Let's put that forward. We were just going to leave it. Because we thought it was a chest infection, and we thought we are self-isolating anyway. We had no plans to go out. We're like, we could just get over this ourselves anyway. But it wasn't until there was a newspaper article came out about the co-op in Kenneway. There was like 5 members of staff or something put on isolation, and there was like lots of customers coming out with different. And
then the co-op shut. Early. To put that into context, so the co-op was meant to be shutting for refurbishment anyway, but because of the COVID outbreak, they decided we'll just shut early, get the refurbishment done, and then that'll be it. So they shut early because of the COVID outbreak, but they already planned to shut, so it wasn't like April. They didn't just shut down for that, but so it seems that we got it 16th to the 19th.
And we only think it's from that shop mainly because of the newspaper article.
But we didn't get tested until the 28th.
Right. So how did that happen? Did you do like a postal test or what?
Yeah, well, that is an earlier thing. So we had symptoms, so we weren't allowed to go in to shops or anything. And I didn't quite have it. So the nearest place that I found was St Andrews, was the nearest drive-through test centre. And I did not have quite enough diesel in my car to get to St Andrews. And having symptoms, I wasn't allowed to go into the garage and get more diesel. And
because I gave you COVID, I couldn't run to the garage.
So we couldn't get diesel. And so we were like, fuck, we're just going to need to deal without a test then. Because I'd heard all these stories about how it was impossible to get a home test kit because they're always out of stock and stuff like that. So we just assumed we weren't going to get a test at any point. But it turns out that wasn't as true as the media made it seem, and it was very, very easy to get a home test kit. So
we got the test delivered. You ordered it 6 or 7 o'clock at night.
Yep, and it was the next day.
We got it the next morning.
Yep,
via Amazon delivery.
Wow. And how long did it take to turn around and then give you a diagnosis?
The next day.
24 hours.
Or was it like a pregnancy test where it tells you the same day? Or
No, you sent, that was an error issue. We had to send it back again. So we had to go twice. No, we didn't need to go twice. We had to go once.
No.
We had to order the test, and then the next day we had to go out with symptoms again. Meant to be illegal, but you need to do it to post your test. To then
in order to post it.
Yeah. And so we had to go out and post this test, and then the next night. So this was 3:30, I'm sure.
You got a message.
Time you had to send.
Basically, you had to send it within the hour of the last pickup of the post box.
Right.
Basically, it's because there's a certain time and they need to check, and it's just in case of false positives. Basically, there's a certain amount of time they need to check the virus is still active.
So I think for hours it was 3:30.
Yeah.
And so we had to send it at 3:30, and then I got my results about 11 o'clock the next night.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, I got mine.
That leads us perfectly. That leads us perfectly to the next question. And the same question from two people. One is David Patrikowski, originally from Poland. He's a friend of mine. He lives in Coventry now.
Nice. And
Ryan Malcolm McGuinness from somewhere in Fife. And they both want to know, how did you react when you heard the diagnosis results, when you found out you had COVID for the first time? You got your diagnosis back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're just saying there, you got your diagnosis results back by text, yeah?
Yeah, by text,
by text, aye.
So we'll answer first since I got my result first.
You go for it, aye.
So I was playing a game with a friend of mine who's a Twitch streamer. So it's very possible...
What, sorry?
A Twitch streamer. It's an online gaming thing where you stream yourself playing games. So it's very possible that my reaction to getting COVID is online somewhere. But I kind of...
yeah, cool.
At this point, because I was starting to get better by the time I got my test results, I assumed that it wasn't COVID. Mm-hmm. So we had already had it in our heads that it wasn't COVID. It was either a flu or a chest infection or something else. But we were pretty sure it wasn't COVID because we weren't as bad as we assumed we were going to be. Mm-hmm. And so when I opened the text and saw that it was COVID, I kind of got a weird feeling of like, oh shit,
I've got that shit.
Aye, it's actual the Rona.
And sorry, continue on. I've got a great.
But because I was already past like the peak of the worst of it, I wasn't as nervous as I probably would have been, because I realised afterwards, and we're probably going to go into this at some point later on, I realised later that I'd got myself more nervous about COVID than I'd let myself believe, or I'd let myself tell people that I was nervous about it. So there was a sense of relief as well, that I was like, shit, right, I've had it and I've beaten it and I'm now on the mend. So good. But also fucking weird, because I didn't hear anybody that's had COVID and now I've got it, and that's odd to me.
Yeah.
So
it didn't do that thing where it kind of, you get the COVID, you feel bad, then you feel better, then you feel bad again.
Not physically, no.
No, just emotionally, mentally.
So I had a slightly, like pretty much the same experience, but I wanted to go back, like when the first few things about coronavirus had come out. I got a cough one night, and I had a panic attack because I thought I had the virus. I thought I'm going to have to move out the house. I was thinking all the worst things in the world, because this was when it was like fresh in everybody's mind. But because it had been so long, and that I knew that like most people were going to survive this thing, I had a little bit of like, I kind of thought we kind of thought we had coronavirus like before we got the test. We had it in our minds that we had it.
Right.
But again, weren't sure that was one of the things. So
I would just say that we thought at this point that we didn't have it.
I did. I thought we did.
Did we not agree at one point though that it was like probably isn't that because we're already better
in the beginning? But it was the day that we got the test through. I was like, it's probably this. But we're near the end because like when I done the test, I was like the next day I was able to go out.
Right.
It was the next day. The guy on the phone said that I was able to go out.
Right.
So at that time, I was
So
like, "So
how did the day after the test you were able? How's that then?
well, basically, because we'd waited so late to get the thing done, the rules on the website said that you have to wait 10 days after the first show of symptoms, and then
right, okay,
then
it's from the symptoms, not from the test. Yeah,
basically, aye. So
I see.
So it wasn't till like the following day, I was sort of free to go outside. I had no intentions of that. I stayed in like a week afterwards, just in case. But so I was totally free.
Because there was still some symptoms. Like
there was
the cough. I mean, my cough persisted for about a month, and
Right.
so I wasn't sure whether what symptoms required you to stay in longer because it says 10 days from the onset of symptoms, but you have to stay in for 14 days if symptoms persist. And I wasn't sure which symptoms they meant. Turns out that doesn't mean cough, that means fever. Because cough could last for months. And
of course.
so it's mainly fever that they're worried about.
Cool. Right. So I've got 3 questions here that are asking the same thing from Dave Grieve in Perth, from Matthew Ritchie in Kirkcaldy, and one from Ian Ferguson, who's an SNP counsellor. So Matthew and Dave asked the same thing. Is there anything you've suffered with comparable symptoms and after effects? Matthew kind of asked the same thing. Can you best describe the physical symptoms you experienced throughout your illness and how was it treated? And just as an example of the standard of service we currently expect from our locally elected members in Fife Council, Ian Ferguson, SNP councillor, says, did it hurt?
Nice.
Can I start this off? Okay, so the first day, the first symptoms I got, but it's very similar to a cold, but But I didn't have the runny nose and stuff like that. You didn't even seem to get that with coronavirus, which is a blessing for me. I hate getting a runny nose and all that stuff. So, aye. But the first day I got quite a heavy dry cough, and that's sort of one of the classic signs. But it was persistent that day. Like usually, with it, if there's any smokers out there, you will have heard of the smoker's cough. Usually, you could clear your throat with like a few coughs. There was no clearing of the throat that entire time. That entire like 12 days I had the virus. I could not get a clear throat at all. The frustration outweighed the pain. It was so irritating because you're just and you're constantly coughing as well. It's not just like I would say maybe once every half an hour you're getting a proper good like sort of cough session.
Normally, like as you say with the smoker's cough, like you'll know yourself, Bill, that once you cough, you get to a point where there's a sense of relief that you're finished with the cough. You've got it. You've got whatever was causing the cough. With COVID, you've never got it.
No,
it's never there. It's subsided enough that you stop coughing, but you've never got it.
I felt that just driving me absolutely mental sometimes because I'd be sitting up late at night. Like I used to get like a much worse cough at night. Obviously, you're lying down and stuff like that, so I'm sure it affects your tubes in that sense. But that was the most frustrating thing, lying back and then just going, cool, I'm going to have to put up with this for an hour before I actually get some sleep. And then there's no clearing of the throat, so you're just going, lying and saying, oh, God. So that was frustrating. And then I noticed another sort of familiar thing is the sort of the loss of taste or the loss of smell. Usually, quite commonly happens to me when I get a cold a lot of the time. But that was like a lot more severe this time. I lost the taste and smell. And to Craig's better explaining
which part?
The car story.
Oh, aye. So we were talking about having to post the COVID test, and we had just bought an air freshener for the car. It was like two or 3 days ago, beforehand, and it was really strong. Like when we bought it, I put it on Stephen's side because it was choking me to death. Like I was coughing and spluttering, I was fucking dying. It was really too strong, so I put it on Stephen's end. And
Thank you.
and so when we went to go post the test, we got in the car and there was no smell there at all. It just smelled like nothing. And so we basically looked at each other and were like, well, that air freshener's shite.
Aye.
That has not lasted very long at all. And for £3, I'm wanting a refund. That's ridiculous.
This is like a proper magic tree, like the proper black magic tree things.
The proper high quality premium
ones
as well, yeah. And it didn't smell anything. And then, I don't know, 2 weeks later, 2 weeks later, whatever it was, when we went back out again, got back in the car, and suddenly it choked us. And so it apparently had been working perfectly fine, but we had just lost all fucking smell. Like when you're talking about losing smell when it's a common cold, you get like a. I describe it as the sort of taste of like a beef stock cube in the back of your nose. I don't know if that that resonates with anybody listening, but I've always called it the beefy taste. That's like the first signs of a common cold.
Yeah, usually I know when I'm fucked for a week.
All right, that's the symptoms of a cold, not a COVID. So anyone who's got oxo in the back of your throat, don't worry.
Yeah,
yeah. If you've got oxo, you've still got taste, so you're fine.
In fact, if you've got oxo, rejoice. You're doing well.
you're good, aye. But that was I had one of my favourite meals. One of the like.
I'm sure it was that night.
Was it that night? Jesus. One of my favourite meals is peppered steak and like white sauce and stuff like that. Usually I like a peppercorn sauce, but Craig's
it's too much pepper. You can't eat pepper on the steak.
I love it, man.
And then pepper in the sauce. That's too much pepper. I love a lot of pepper. That's my favourite meal. Sat down to that, hated it. Shite.
Could not taste anything. Craig said to me, he says, to be honest, everything just tasted like milk. So that was it. That was just absolutely ruined their food.
For two fat bastards. Like
yes.
You can't mess with the taste of food.
Absolutely. Didn't you train as a chef as well, Stephen?
I did, aye.
There you are. So it probably wasn't the fact that you made the food and it was too bland. Genuinely, you just couldn't. That's just mental. I just tried to get my head around the idea of not being able to taste anything at all.
It's difficult to comprehend. It really is.
There is something that you do taste, but there's like it's concealed a lot.
Yeah, it's like eating bland stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's like drinking water. People say there's no flavour to water, but you can taste water, right? Yeah. You can tell that it's water that you're drinking. It's like that. It's like everything's bland as fuck. But
so in 50 years' time, when you're in a nursing home, this is what it'll be like. You know, that kind of bland stuff they feed to like people who are in elderly nursing.
Yeah, it'll be like having COVID.
Nice yeah, there you go. So you've had some practice.
Yeah. Basically, everything tastes like high school food. Yeah, basically.
All right, yeah. I quite like high school food.
Yeah, we were talking the other day about the grey burgers that they used to have.
Like sad. Like they used to it seemed like they used to boil the burgers.
Yeah.
So they're just like really sad and grey and dead.
But really super fucking juicy.
Super juicy because they were boiled in water
and salty brine, so it was like proper salty and juicy.
Awful, just awful sadness.
Oh dear.
But there was another part of the question you asked there is what else you would compare it to. Mm-hmm. That's another question. I'll get to that in a sec. The thing that I compared it to mostly, I compared it to two different things. I compared it to having a chest infection and the flu at the same time. So I've got asthma, so I have chest infections quite regularly. And the thing that I've noticed with a chest infection is it's like a really seriously bad cold, but without the runny nose. That's basically what, as Stephen described it as well. So I thought it was a chest infection for the longest, for the vast majority of the time that I had COVID. I thought it was a chest infection because, like, you cough and stuff. But then there was added breathlessness, so I thought it was flu. Because the one time I had flu is I couldn't breathe either. But it was just a worsened version of both of those things put together for me. And then on the Thursday night, I thought I was going to faint. I was so lightheaded. I was in bed all day. I couldn't breathe. And then I tried to sit up at night. I think I was going to get water or something. And suddenly I just got a huge head rush and just had to lie back down again. It was the worst fucking feeling I've ever had in my life. It was so weird.
Wow.
I was pretty sure I was going to pass out. And then Stephen came up, and you pretty much said the same thing, that I was a state. I was white. I was ready to fucking pass out at any second. So that's how I would describe it. But pain, there wasn't any pain. Well,
I got pain afterwards.
Aye.
But I think we're going to talk about that later as well.
It was with coughing. It was when you do a lot of coughing. There was pain in the stomach. But that's I wouldn't classify that as a COVID thing. I would just say it's a coughing thing. If you cough a lot, it hurts your muscles or whatever.
Again, indirectly. So,
the thing, like one thing that happened to me, it was just like a few weeks afterwards. It was a quite a heavy cough, but like every time I coughed, it felt like there was like a huge immense pressure in my belly. And this was like quite late at night, and I thought it was never going to disappear because it was still active in the morning. But I think like by about maybe tea time, it had dissipated completely as well. So like for that short time, I just had like every time I coughed, I felt like my belly was just going to explode. It felt it was really, really bad. But that's never come up again.
No.
So I don't know if I'm maybe eating something that day. It could have been anything, but aye.
That's the other issue, is because you've got COVID and because COVID's constantly being mentioned in the media and stuff.
You just think
everything that happens, you think, shit, it's because I had COVID. Shit, I'm going to die. I'm going to, like. I think sometimes, like, don't get me wrong, stay in the fucking house, wear your mask if you need to go out, but probably didn't go out. Just fucking stay in the house. Didn't go to parties. Didn't be a dick. Get the vaccine when it comes out, when you're allowed to get it at least. But also, it's not. We also need to calm down as well. Like, calm down. Because that's causing a lot of people a lot of fucking fear. And not everybody needs to be as scared as they are. Again, clarify again, stay in the fucking house, didn't get it, didn't pass it to people. But also, like, chill, like, calm down. Didn't go out and buy loads of stuff that you didn't need, didn't go and fucking attack people. Just, like, chill the fuck out of you.
The way it's worked out, like, ultimately, you're, like, most people are going to be fine. It seems. But there are unfortunate cases where people die. And you just didn't want that to happen. And it's a bit of a gamble sometimes as well.
It's kind of a sophisticated message, isn't it? A complex message, perhaps, better would say, what you're trying to say there. Because there's people who appear to be just kind of laughing it off and not taking it seriously, and obviously they then become quite potentially hazardous to people in the community who are vulnerable, maybe like older people. And then there's people, like you said as well, who maybe taking it more seriously than they need to, who are getting really anxious, and it's affecting their mental health. And you kind of, what you guys, I hear what you guys are trying to say is, you're trying to talk to everybody and say, be responsible, but don't have a panic attack. I think as well, there's people as well that confuses the issue. I think there's a lot of people who appear to be not taking it seriously, and there's a lot of bravado, but then maybe they're in denial. They're just saying tra la 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 la. They don't want to think about it, so they're on social media talking about it's a hoax or whatever. In fact, that leads us beautifully on to the next question from Dave Grieve. Dave Grieve, who I split his question into two. He wants to know, is it really spread by jets spraying 5G chemtrails funded by Bill Gates so that he can inject fluoride-based trackers into me so he can track me walking from one charity shop to another, buying old crap I used for 2 weeks and then redonate when the novelty wears off? I mean, that's a good question. And because you guys, of course, are now experts, because you did that interview that we mentioned earlier on with that professor of epidemiology, you're the go-to guys to answer this question.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Yep.
Yes, it is. Okay.
There you go.
So,
thank you for the question, David.
Right. That's great, Dave. So this one, this is another far-flung question from another friend of mine from down south, Eva Jasinska Davidson from Wakefield, which is kind of near Leeds.
Nice.
How long did it take you to recover?
It's good.
So I think there might be one from somewhere else outside the UK, or maybe there isn't. Well, there isn't.
You said the Polish person earlier.
Coventry.
Yeah, but Eva
Jasinska Davidson is Polish, and David Patrykowski is Polish. So, and there's also one from Newcastle. So, I mean, it's pretty cosmopolitan, guys. And obviously, the wisdom that you guys share with us today will be taken back, to the friends and families of David and Eva, and they'll be able to go back to Poland and talk to them and share your wisdom. So just make sure you're spot on.
I just hope they could understand.
I don't know if I've asked you the question yet.
I just hope they could understand what we said.
I know. What we'll maybe do is provide a transcript or something. The thing was, these guys, by the way, listeners, these two guys, Craig and Stephen, did an interview with this epidemiologist who was from America, and also previously did an interview with a candidate for the Senate in an American state, Luke Bohm, who was also American, obviously, from Ohio, I think. And I thought, listening into it, that these guys might have a trouble understanding Craig and Stephen's accent, and they didn't at all. There was none of that kind of, could you repeat yourself sort of stuff. So,
You know what's great?
You maybe need to lay the accent on a bit more thick, guys, make a bit more of an effort.
Well, what's been great is doing the hip-hop podcast, was we're mostly speaking to Americans, for like a couple of Australians on and stuff like that.
Right.
We spoke to a guy from Virginia, sort of deep in the deep South America, sort of. So we had a conversation with him. Not once did he have us go back and sort of repeat what we said. He totally understood everything we're saying.
Yeah,
and it's been amazing to go through some of those things, man.
Although I think with Polish people, if English is their second language, that might be an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Like the thick accent plus it's a second language.
Double learning.
And I don't speak Polish, so we're kind of fucked.
No. Well, exactly. And I'll tell you what, that's another story for another podcast, learning Polish. That's great fun. Anyway, Eva Jasinska Davison, I can't remember if I asked a question or not, but she asked, how long did it take you to recover fully? Has it had any impact on your mental health?
Fully. I don't know, what would you characterise as fully? Like, back to exactly what you were before?
Well, I mean, I guess.
Because if
you reckon that you're not there yet?
If we're including mental health, probably not. Because I still feel like I'm in this slump.
I'm more worried now when I go out about getting it again, even though it's not technically entirely possible that I can get it again. But it scares me to fucking death because I don't want that again. Because the frustration of the coughing is the only thing that fucking scares me. And seemingly it gets worse if you get a second time, so I definitely don't want it.
There was a professor who purposely injected him. He caught COVID in February, and on a skiing trip before people really fully knew it was there. So he was on a skiing trip, and he caught it in February, and he just went home, and he was, I'd imagine, as ill as us, but he just went home and he was fine afterwards, right? And 6 months later, this is when people were still talking about Sweden as if it was a success story. People have tended to walk away from that a wee bit now because Sweden's ICU capacity is at less than 1%. But this is when they were.
So Sweden, what did they do? Did they do nothing apart from track and trace, or just nothing?
They've done track and trace, and they've asked people to wear masks and social distance, but they didn't. They limited social gatherings to, I think it was 100 or 50, like way more than anybody here. So they done very little to stem the virus.
But they've still done something. Right. But there's people out there saying that they've never done anything in Sweden.
They really didn't. They didn't enforce anything. They didn't.
Oh, so it was like a
suggestion.
Guideline.
It was a passive suggestion. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But they really didn't do anything legally to do anything with the virus. They relied on the population density. That's what they relied on, because Sweden is quite rural. Mm-hmm. Like most places in Sweden are quite rural.
Huge forestry areas and stuff like that.
So they assumed normal epidemiology stuff that it wouldn't spread because people were spread out more. And that turned out not to be the case. Apparently COVID is different from other infectious diseases. So I don't know, I can't remember why, but we done a whole podcast about this, so you go back and check that out. That was a good
Check it out, man.
That's right.
What the fuck was my point? What was I saying?
I don't know, but I think what you should do is give a plug to people so they know where to go and find that if they listen to this for the first time. So they just look up
what's been funny? I've been sitting here going, I better hold back the plug-in for because this is Bill's podcast, and I'm like, no, it's my podcast. It's our podcast.
It's actually yours. and we keep referring back to that interview you had with the epidemiologist.
Yeah.
So people really are going to want to listen to that. So you need to give them the.
Well, we have a much more. We have a much more condensed version for the people that don't understand that accent as well, which is perfect. So the bit where we just the answers from Katrine.
Oh yeah, on our Facebook page, what is the Facebook page called? Is it
BTN Media?
BTN Media, but is it no BEET?
We'll have the link in the description anyway, so people can find that there.
Anyway, go on Facebook and go to BTN Media,
you can edit it.
And then our videos have, I think there's 14 videos where it's just a question and then her answer, and that's every single question in the podcast. Mm-hmm. I trimmed out all the shite. I trimmed out me talking as much as possible. I trimmed out like passive conversations and stuff like that, and it's just full on question answer. There's 14 videos there. That's pretty much perfect if you're interested in.
If people want to
get
into the actual nitty gritty of that podcast, that's the best way to do it. I would say
that covers the vaccine. It covers what epidemiology is. It covers how COVID spreads, whether you can go into pools or whether it's a big COVID soup. It covers pretty much everything. So, Facebook, good. BTN Media.
So we were talking about have you recovered fully, physically and mentally?
Oh yeah.
And you said like mentally and emotionally, you're not sure, you're still anxious. But then I think you were going on from there to talk about how you're recovering. I
forgot about that. That was where I got lost.
Right.
So what happened to me was the physical symptoms came, and then they went after 10, 12, let's say 2 weeks. They went mostly the cough. Right. The cough's away now, I think, but it took a good month, maybe more than that, for the cough to go away.
Me,
I mean, you could tell even in the Luke Baum interview. I think you could tell, but maybe you can't. That I was breathless. I was quite breathless in that podcast, and I was coughing quite a lot even during the podcast. And that was like,
all right.
That was like 2 weeks after the first symptoms of COVID, maybe 3 weeks after the first symptoms of COVID. So it was at least still then. But what happened to me is we went into I went into a mental slump where I sort of lost any interest in doing stuff.
Well, that's we're sleeping a lot. I'm sorry, we're like doing like 16-hour shifts of sleeping.
Aye.
Sorry, I just done exactly what I'm moaning people are doing a podcast. I sat back and got too relaxed. So we're doing like 16-hour shifts of sleep, and just like completely neglecting any stuff we had to get done as well.
Aye. So what I decided to do afterwards is I took 2 months off. Well, I took 2 months of cutting down most of the stuff that I do. So I'm in Solidarity, I do the website stuff, and I was meant to be making another website for Solidarity, but I cut that away and just stuck to updating articles and stuff. And then I cut a lot of the BTN Media work away. We've cut down our interviews. I've missed quite a few interviews actually. And I'm slowly, over the course of about 2 months, working my way back up. And I think I'm pretty much getting there. That took a while. That took much longer than the physical symptoms.
Sure. For our Polish and English listeners, Solidarity is a Scottish political party, and Solidarity is an exact translation of Solidarność, which was a Polish political party, and it's kind of vaguely similar in its aims as well. Yeah. So Craig he's the website manager person for the political party. That's where I take time off from.
Indeed.
So anything to add to that, Stephen, in terms of recovery?
Not really. I think on the most part, it shook me up a bit, because like before, as I say, I was like sort of missing out parts of like where I'm like getting back in the car, I'm not putting the alcohol rub back on my hand sort of thing. But now it's every single time I'm out now, and I've become pretty fucking bad for that. So that revived the need for to do that sort of thing.
What we have noticed though is because Kenny at one point was statistically per head of population, what became after we had COVID, like the weeks after we had COVID, became one of the worst areas in Scotland for COVID cases per head of population. we were doing really bad.
Oh, aye.
And we've noticed now that there was a big uptake in people wearing masks and social distancing.
Right.
There was still the arseholes.
No.
Like they've never went away, but I noticed a big increase in people starting to take it more seriously again.
Well,
that was great to see because now our cases have went significantly down.
Even a lot of the shop people, and sorry to throw them under the bus, but fuck it. There was a lot of people that worked in the shops that were saying sort of openly to to the track and trace folk that they're all like fully actively wearing masks and all that stuff. Sorry, but some of the shops fucking weren't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sorry to throw them under the bus, but I don't care. So I'm sure that I'm pretty sure how that happened.
But now all the shops are wearing masks.
Aye.
There's a big mask over every shop now.
It's been crazy actually, just going back up and seeing the people. There's just one mask.
Just one mask, aye.
It's been crazy going back up the street and seeing like everybody sort of masking up and stuff. And you can see already people, once the manager of the shop has left, they're away with the masks off already.
Yeah.
There's already people starting to fucking already. It's annoying.
Yeah. Right. I should have said there, actually, that question that asked you about how you're feeling now and are you recovered, that was a common question from a lot of people, including David Cunningham, who's a paramedic from Dunfermline. He's really interested in, the kind of the long-term, how you feeling now.
Mm.
And also Daffy Patrikowski, who we mentioned earlier. And I think that might be, everyone has asked that question. Or Matthew Ritchie as well, of course, from Kirkcaldy. So then there's another question that a lot of people are really interested in asking. Matthew Ritchie is the first one. What advice would you give others who doubt this virus exists? And Eugene Clark from Cellardyke, how do you feel about those who claim it's not serious and we shouldn't take the vaccine? Liam Coyle, what are your feelings to people who are anti-vaccination? So very similar theme from those three people.
Okay.
What do you say to the doubters?
Yep, lick a door handle.
Door handle.
Yep. This is... if you don't believe it's real, I feel like, and you've sort of disagreed with me on these things before, I feel like people need to get it to understand it's real, and I feel like more people need to get it sometimes. Which maybe is a terrible thing to say. Yes, I do understand that, but one of the most annoying things is the people that are sort of going about in party mode a lot of the time and just meeting in big groups are likely the people that aren't going to get this at all.
It's fucking annoying.
It's super irritating, and we're again one of the people that actually took it seriously for a long time. Again, sort of lapsed on some of the things, but
we still wore the mask.
We still wore masks and stuff like that.
Avoided going out. We refused parties. I mean, how many times did we refuse to go to that friend's house? Who just didn't seem to kid that there was a fucking pandemic on. No naming names, but
there was an engagement and stuff like that as well. That's fuck, we missed all that shit.
Aye.
But aye,
but then these dickheads go to house parties and nothing happens.
Aye. But aye, like a door handle. That's my advice to you. If you don't believe the vaccine is real, they don't believe the vaccine is real. If you don't believe in the virus, like a door handle.
Aye, I didn't ken what. I mean, it's been fucking since March. What is that now? What, 10 months? 10 months.
Oh, it's December, isn't it?
If you didn't understand that it's real now, I mean, you're a fucking lost cause.
Basically,
there's 1.6 million people have died for that. And no, I can. When you die in a car crash, they put COVID on your. No, they fucking didn't. That was so fucking dumb.
That was debated for a very short time. I feel like 10 minutes. it seemed like that.
People still believe it. People still think that's happening.
See, I've not heard anybody talking about it.
And go on any fucking media comment section. That's all cunts are saying. Right wing reactionaries. Oh, aye. Of course, there's a lot of deaths because they put you as dying for COVID if you die for anything. Oh, I cut my finger and I died. Oh, you died of COVID. No, that's not what happens. You're a fucking idiot. You're a mutant.
Jesus. But if people understood how autopsies worked and the actual process of writing down at the end of an autopsy and stuff like that, it's usually just this organ stopped as the result of this happening, and then there's usually 3 leading things that happens, and it's no due to virus, it's due to heart stopping or loss of stopped breathing at some point. It's usually those kind of things that they're going to have COVID on the autopsy at the end. It's
people that don't understand the process claiming that it's fucking Dunning-Kruger effect. Mm-hmm. People that are too stupid to understand how fucking stupid they are, and I don't know how I don't know how to. At this point, I do not fucking know how to explain any better, because even this it's just a flu, or it's just as you're just as likely to die of flu as you are. Yes, if by just as likely you mean like 3 or 4 times as likely, because there's 4 times as many deaths for COVID in the UK than there is the flu. So it's just if you've looked at any of the numbers, you know that that's not true, and they still keep fucking saying it.
That statistic was knocked out the park. Like, I think it was only like a month in,
like April
or something like that. It was already knocked out the park. That whole statistic that they came out with.
Well, and then there was confusion as well in the early days about people saying that they were confused because deaths from other causes were going down, but deaths from COVID were going up. So people weren't dying so much from having heart attacks. People weren't dying enough from having from having other conditions.
Yeah.
But then that's because those people who had those underlying conditions, they were more vulnerable to COVID, and then they were dying of COVID. So someone had, for example, a very weak heart, contracted COVID, and they died of that. Well, they didn't die of having a weak heart because then they got COVID, and then that killed them because they were weakened.
Yeah.
They were vulnerable.
Yeah.
But then even that took me a while to understand. But that's social media for you. It's a breeding ground for.
Again, it's just not having all the information at the one time. It's easy to get confused with these things. That's great that you brought that up. The people that were like probably in hospital already with things like pneumonia and like urine infections and stuff, shit that affects the brain, and like bronchial diseases and stuff like that. These are the guys that are getting affected by that shit.
Yeah.
The guys on the outside first, but these are the guys that are getting affected with that stuff and probably will have died at some point, but it's just been sort of rushed on. It's like,
I mean, a big thing now is people sharing the statistics of COVID versus flu. Mm-hmm. There's been 60,000 deaths from COVID, and there's been we're now in December, and there's been less than 400 deaths from flu, and people are now saying that this is proof of a conspiracy theory, or what's more likely, that there's a massive worldwide conspiracy theory to I don't even know what the fucking end game is with that. Is fucked everybody
with every single country in the world.
Every single country, communists and capitalists fighting the gear. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's the grand conspiracy theory. Or is COVID more transmittable than flu, and so more people have got flu, more people have got COVID, and because COVID kills more people, it's killed people that would have got flu anyway. Does that not seem more likely?
Seems a bit more sensible to me.
To me, that seems more likely. I'm not an epidemiologist, but I feel like that seems more likely.
Yeah.
But you have interviewed one. And also, if you've already got the flu and then the COVID comes on, it's like the 1-2 in boxing, isn't it? Kind of first punch and the second punch. You've already got flu, which you're susceptible to. So then again, you're vulnerable, and on comes COVID and wipes you out because it got you a weak moment.
Yeah.
So I think you've answered that question very well. I mean, essentially, we can sum up your response to what are you feeling to people who are anti-vaccination? You are a mutant, lick a door handle. I think that just sums it up. That's perfect.
Right on.
So there's a man from Newcastle, Tony Dowling, having experienced COVID. If you were Prime Minister, or perhaps First Minister in the Scottish context, what would you want the country's COVID strategy to be?
I've got the feeling you're going to ask me to answer this.
Yes, we've discussed it. We have discussed this at length, though. The idea that the government had to shut everybody down, kind of. Well, basically, at the very beginning, we decided that we were just going to sort of self-isolate, keep away from everybody, because that's what we do when we have a flu. If we have a flu, we didn't go anywhere, so we just followed our own guidelines based on that. But so I felt like the government having to step in and sort of just warn everybody, and like everybody had to take that in first, and then they're having to ask when they can go back out. That fucking annoyed me, but you could probably answer it better.
So I've always been pretty consistent when it comes to things like infectious diseases. But I'm a hypochondriac, so it's just a thing that's in my life. And so with flu, I've always been like staying away from people when they're coughing. You've seen Big Bang Theory, eh?
Yeah.
Sheldon, when Raj has a cold, Sheldon instantly gets hand sanitizer out and tells Raj to sit away from him and goes exactly as you're meant to go with COVID. Yes, fucking go like that all the time. That's how you're meant to deal with infectious diseases. Just deal with it like every other infectious disease.
People had to
fucking stay away from people. Wear your mask. Wash your fucking horns. Then go out. Like, it should not need government guidance for people to fucking learn how to do this. The only place that government assistance should come in is allowing people to self-isolate. So what I think should have happened, I was never in favour of like a full lockdown, because my fear at the time, which has been debunked since, but my fear at the time was that suicides would go up, and I was worried that the negative effects of mental health and like shutdowns then caused like general treatments to go down, like cancer screenings and stuff like that. And so we're thinking that in a couple of years we're going to see an increase, like a spike in like cancer deaths or heart failures and things like that.
They've not been treated in the nick of time, right?
Yeah, that sort of stuff. And then with the added depression, and the assumption was that suicides were going to go up. Thankfully, that's been debunked, and that suicides weren't affected because of lockdowns.
Oh wow, good.
And in Japan,
I'm very pleased to hear that.
In Japan, they actually went down by 20%. And the assumption with that is that when lockdown happened, community spirit came back, and people were surrounded by support groups, and people were checking in on people and phoning each other and checking to see if everybody was all right. Which kind of goes to show that that could have been done anyway, and we didn't need to have such a high suicide rate if people would just have their community spirit anyway. But that's a different thing for me to moan about. So
that's really interesting. And this, sorry to interrupt briefly, don't lose your train of thought. But this chap Matthew Ritchie, who I've mentioned a few times, that he's a community activist in Kirkcaldy, and he's really, really keen on this whole idea of communities helping each other and people in the community helping each other.
Yeah.
So there's a suggestion for a future podcast for you guys to interview him. Sorry, so carry on. What do you think the government should have done, or if you were the government, what would you have done?
I had a level of sympathy for the government, even the Tories, which is weird for me. Back in, I think it was March and April, because the tests were hard to come by, and because everybody needed the tests, and they weren't being manufactured at a high enough rate because no one really expected a worldwide pandemic to the scale of COVID, which is fair. So there wasn't enough tests at the time. But now there is enough tests, and so what should have happened is a solid track and trace regime where people were given proper money to isolate, which they haven't been given yet. I think in England you're not given anything for isolating. In Scotland you're given £500 for isolating. But there hasn't been anywhere near enough incentive for people to actually stay home. Because if they stay off their work, they're not getting paid. I don't think in England you're even getting...
Has the furlough percentage went down as well?
Furloughs went down. It's down at like 65% now. So if you're a 17-year-old who's working in a place that's shut, let's say you're working in a pub that's shut, maybe a 17-year-old isn't allowed to do that.
Wait or something.
You're in a place that's shut. You're working at a community centre or something, right?
It's a kitchen porter,
totally. And the place is shut and you're on furlough. You're getting 75% of your wage, which is at 17. I think it's like £4.50 or £5.
Wow.
Something like that.
Minimum wage,
you're getting 75% of your minimum wage. Milk isn't cheaper if you're 17. No. If you've got a car, if anything, it's more fucking expensive. And you have to live off the 75% of your wage. It's fucking nonsense.
I've always hated that. Always hated that way of working.
So I think if they wanted to force people to stay home, fucking pay them to stay home. Mm-hmm. Then he just didn't just give them a shitty small percentage of what they need. But what should have happened is people should have been given the option of self-isolating if they needed to, and then given proper compensation for that. And then a proper track and trace system should have been installed. And then work on different tier systems earlier. They seem to have went for a centralised approach at the beginning. And if you know anything about me, you know that centralisation never works in my view. And that's where they failed. They didn't take a local approach because different areas were having different situations. So they needed very specific approaches for different areas. And they didn't do that. And I think that's where they failed. And now that they're trying to catch up, and it's just not going to happen because now when they're doing the right things, people are already bored, and they needed to be doing that at the beginning.
And one of the issues is as well, because they were sort of learning on the job, like as they were going, like new things were coming up, people have started to go, oh well, if we didn't need that in the beginning, why are we needing it now? Because they're only listening to the government side of the story. They're not following the science. They're only hearing what the government are saying. It's really, really irritating.
Yeah, because obviously the government's on a learning curve, so the more it learns, the more it adapts and its strategy, which you'd expect it to do. You'd hope it would do. Yeah.
Well, that was a big thing.
And it's question here. Sorry, carry on. Yeah,
with the masks. Yeah. At the beginning, there was two things. One was that you can't use PPE masks because nurses need them and paramedics need them and medical professionals need them, right? Which is totally fair, totally understand. Yeah. I agree. But then they had the cloth masks, and people. It was fairly assumed at the beginning that cloth masks were probably more harmful than good because they are for most other things.
Sorry, like what masks? Sorry,
cloth,
what you saying
cloth ones. Cloth.
Oh, cloth. Sorry, yeah.
Because that is true for most infectious diseases, but the difference with COVID is that COVID is mostly spread by droplet spread, which is like spit coming from your mouth and stuff like that, and that is bigger than the infection itself or the virus. Yeah. So that can't get through the cloth masks, but virus can. But COVID requires droplets to be spread. So that was a piece of scientific information that changed the scientific view, and people, for some reason, just couldn't comprehend that science could change its mind. And that was a big issue.
Because it never does.
Yeah.
It always stays the same.
Yeah. So it's like these little particles of virus can't go anywhere on their own. They have to fly around in little spaceships, and the little spaceships are droplets of water that come out your mouth. And the little viruses are tiny, but they can't go anywhere unless they're in these droplets, and the droplets can't get through the mask. There you go. There's your answer. Superb. So if you want to sum up your response to what should the government have done, and what would you do if you're the government, basically, what the Scottish government could have done is aired that clip from the Big Bang Theory with Sheldon and Raj when he got the virus, and say, look, just do this, and then people would have related to it and understood.
100%. Yes, that should have been every single COVID advert.
Exactly, because the COVID adverts are quite good up here in Scotland, I have to say. But there's Nicola, if you're listening, and I know that you do listen to BTN podcast. There's your next step, and also financial support for self-isolation, like proper full-on financial support.
Yeah, I mean we know of a few clubs that are shutting now because they didn't have the proper financial support when they were forced to close, and that to me that's just not on. If you're going to force somebody to close, you need to fucking pay them. That you can't just be. If they need to close, fine, but you can't just let them die because you're not going to support them. Although, in defence of the Scottish Government, they don't control funding. Westminster does. So they're limited.
Absolutely.
They can't borrow money. They have a specific amount of money. They need to use that money, and if they're not given any extra, they can't provide assistance. So a lot of people are moaning at the wrong people sometimes, I feel.
So horrible, kind of like having to ask mum for a loan.
Aye. I mean, you saw it with Manchester. I can't remember his name, but the mayor of Manchester was talking about how he was only willing to shut down
Burnham
if they give. Like that. Andy Burnham, and they gave him something like 5 or 10 million less than he needed, and so he was like, "Well, I'm no fucking doing it then."
He felt he was being set up to fail.
Yeah.
So,
And he probably was. He's a Labour guy.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's party politics.
Yeah.
So, right, now some of these questions have been asked before. I'll just name check the people as I go through because I've obviously not been efficient enough in organising these questions in clumps.
That's
Lee
your first
Ann
mistake.
Watson Crooks. Oh, yeah. Well, that's my first mistake. We're almost at the end here, so that's good. Lee Ann Watson Crooks. What help is being offered now? Can you share your symptoms and problems they're facing now? Also, well, we just did do that, so we spoke about the long COVID stuff many times. So, what help is being offered now? I mean, I don't know what Leanne's after there. Are we talking? So, we've spoken about financial stuff. We've just finished talking about that. There isn't really any kind of ongoing care for people who have had COVID. In fact, in terms of the treatment, which is the next question, there is no real treatment for it either if you're self-isolating. Is that right?
Not really,
No.
not.
I mean, if you're in hospital, they give you blood that's been donated by people with antibodies. But apart from that,
We've never been contacted to get involved in that.
the nearest place to give blood is Dundee.
Oh, right.
So they need to get that shit fixed in Fife. I think there's a blood thing in Cooper we were meant to go to a couple of days ago.
Oh,
but I was ill.
Oh, I never heard about this.
So no, I planned it, but I was ill.
By the way, seeing as you guys have had a bit of a rant, I'll have a very small rant, as is my one. I
Go for it, Bill. I love these
weeks ago. I'm gonna hold it back because this is your interview. But I went to give blood a few weeks ago in Corrie, town where I live. I turned up with my mask on, hand sanitizer all over the place. Super, no problem. Now I've got a rare blood group, so it's quite important for me to give blood apparently. So they tell me only 2% of people have my blood, so I need to give blood. So I turned up, I've got my mask on, and we go through the whole routine. I fill in the forms and everything that you do as per normal. People are sitting further apart, so I'm thinking this is good because I'm very conscious of this whole COVID thing. Mm-hmm. Then I get to the point where I go to lie down on the bed and they're going to put the needle in my arm and take my blood. And the woman says to me, you need to take your mask off. And I say, no, well, that's kind of pointless. I've been wearing my mask all the time. I don't want to take off. I'm going to keep my mask on. Even though the mask is not supposed to protect me, it's supposed to protect everybody else. It's like, look, let's just all play the game, right? Yeah. I'm going to keep my mask on. No, you have to take it off. We got in a bit of an argument. Then she calls over another woman who looked like some kind of nurse or a doctor, some kind of medical professional, maybe a few ranks further up the ladder. Anyway, she was very bossy. She had lots of authority, like she knew what was going on. And she said, you don't have to take your mask off because you don't have to give blood today. Basically, she was saying it's an ultimatum. You take your mask off or you go home, right? And I'm thinking, this is ridiculous. I'm in a room with like 40 or 50 people, maybe more than that if you take all the blood donor staff wandering about. Right. So then I was in a bit of a quandary, right? I get these letters and these texts. Sometimes I even get phone calls from the blood transfusion people saying, Bill, please go and give blood. It's important, it's like your duty. And I'm like, okay, I'll be a good boy. And now I've got this person telling me to take a mask off and I really don't want to. So I ended up giving blood, but then I take my mask off. And so even if you guys had gone to give or get blood, then there's another set of quandaries that comes up there as well. So that really annoyed me. That frustrated me. But
did they give any logic for that? Because that doesn't seem to make any sense.
Yeah. So the logic was, they said, we need to keep an eye on you in case you're going to faint. I said, well, I'll faint. I says, you'll see that I'll faint, right? Because I'm lying down, but my head will wobble about. And it said, no, what we'll do is if one of the first signs is your lips will turn blue, and if you've got a mask on, you can't see that. I said, well, what about if I sit up to give blood, and then if I faint, I'll fall over and you'll see it? No. You take your mask off or you don't give blood because we need to see if your lips turn blue. I was like, oh, for God's sake. So I gave blood and then just bolted. Yeah, it was really annoying. There didn't seem to be any kind of room for negotiation. And maybe they're just like, look, we've got to get 500 people in a day and we're not going to mess about, with individual conversations. Let's do what you're told. Which is kind of my response to COVID. If everyone did what they're told, we'd all be happy. So I suppose, that was their position,
They should at least tell you in advance, because like, if you're wearing a mask, it might be something, I know it's not meant to protect you, but it might make somebody feel more secure if they're in the mask. So
exactly. And the thing is,
offer a shield.
Phoned me that, but I don't have one of them. And I didn't know in advance, and so they'd actually phoned me on the Saturday before, and women had phoned me in person, and I had the conversation. I said, look, I'm in a quandary. I really want to give blood, but I'm worried about infection. And, we're in contact with my father-in-law, and he's quite elderly and stuff. My wife's on medication that suppresses her immune system. We're not messing about.
Right,
we need to be really careful. So that's why I've not been to give blood for a while. And she talked me through it. She was like, don't worry, when you turn up, everybody was sitting further apart than normal. Everybody hand sanitizer, yada, 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 everyone else. And so she reassured me. And then she said to me at the end, of course, look, it's still up to you. Don't worry. We understand, but we hope you'll come along. So she'd actually talked me through the thing and kind of talked me into it. And exactly as you said, what she missed out was that bit right at the end was, by the way, when you turn up, you have to take your mask off, and of course, everything had gone according to plan. So as each step was fulfilled, as I was giving blood, I'm thinking, well, this is fine, I'm relaxing, I'm quite happy, until bang, they dropped that bombshell, take your mask off, And I'm quite obstinate and aggressive in the best of times anyway. So anyway, they got the blood and I didn't get the virus, so hopefully all is good. Mm-hmm. Right, enough about me. Tom Robertson wants to know what level of care was needed. Again, we've kind of covered this. Sorry, Tom, I didn't put your question in when I should have. What treatments were given? There were no treatments given. To your knowledge, however, this is a good one. Did you pass the virus on to anyone else?
I would be surprised.
I definitely don't think so, because
the only thing I could think of that we went out after contracting COVID was maybe to KFC.
I went to KFC. That was the day I thought I had the symptoms, but I hadn't fully figured it out yet, because I was only just a slight coughing. Yeah. As I say, I was smoking at the time. So that day we only really went to KFC,
and it was drive-through.
And it was drive-through,
and so it was just us grabbing the bag.
Mm-hmm.
There was no.
That's got like minimum risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
Aye.
So
yeah.
I'd be
that's
I'd
the
be
thing
surprised.
when you're kind of pre-symptomatic or only symptoms that you're confusing with a smoker's cough. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right now, Agnes Stevenson, did you have an immunity problem? And if you did they say anything about brain problems? You guys know a lot more about COVID than this, so you might know what Agnes is referring to, a brain problem. Did you have an immunity problem? And if you did they say anything about brain problems?
I don't know. Immunity problem, I don't know what that means.
Well, like, for example,
did you have
some people, like, for example, my wife, takes medication to suppress her immune system because of rheumatoid arthritis. Or some people just have, like, immunity suppressed immunodeficiency or something. Mm-hmm. So I don't think either of you guys have got that. But I did mean to mention at the beginning that, Craig, you won't mind me mentioning that you were born with only one kidney, and one of the symptoms of late-stage COVID is kidney failure. So that might have been... Did you actually worry about that, or did you think about that? Did you remember about that when
I
you had
didn't
COVID?
know until you just told me there.
I was just going to say, I've got a funny feeling Craig didn't know because his face went white.
All right. It was on the document that I sent you. Right. So... Right, that's the clue. Well, there's the secret to a happy life. Never read the instructions. Never go into the detail. Anyway, you didn't get it, so you're okay. You've dodged that bullet.
That backfired
so,
on
and
me.
obviously it didn't worry.
So I didn't read that document because I liked the concept of so the way we do the podcast normally is just off the cuff, and you get more like surprises.
Absolutely.
When you get surprises and stuff, it's great.
That's not a surprise I wanted.
There you go.
Craig is chalk white right now. It's amazing.
Yeah. I didn't know that. So, but if
it makes you any happier, I've only got one kidney as well. So, but I've not had COVID yet. So, so I'm actually in the worst position because if I do get COVID, I know about this thing, so I will be crapping myself. Whereas you've had COVID and didn't, and you just sailed through it, ignorance is bliss. So actually, I'm potentially in the worse position than you are. I hope that helps you feel better.
Yeah, it does a wee bit. But here's a tip for you: good. Get tested once you feel better. That's what I've done, and I feel so much happier about it.
Oh, so you got tested again to make sure that you were okay?
No. I mean, I was already starting to feel better when I got tested.
Sorry. Yes.
So I'd passed the peak already.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I understand. Got you.
But in terms of the immunity thing, you've often suggested... So I have a weird thing. Do you know what norovirus is?
Norovirus, it happened a few years ago. It was a big thing with lots of people throwing up and being sick.
Yeah, it's called the winter vomiting bug or something.
So, winter vomiting bug, there you go.
So the symptoms of that is that you become very feverish, you get very weak, and then you vomit and have diarrhea for about 3 days. That's the winter vomiting bug. And a lot of people suffer dehydration. A lot of people have... I wouldn't say a lot of people. Depends how you define a lot of people, but some people have died because of this. That if you're older and you vomit and have diarrhea for 3 days, you're going to die. And so I get norovirus or the symptoms of norovirus like twice a week. And it's not for 3 days, so I have it for about 5 hours twice a week. And so...
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. I've asked the doctor, and she said...
But you've always had it. You've had it for years. This has happened for years.
For about 3 or 4 years now.
Years with you.
Maybe 5 years. And I don't know why. So I'll wake up in the morning, and I'll feel fine. And then later on, tends to be about 10, 11 o'clock, I'll start to feel a bit shitty. And then I'll get this really annoying feeling in my stomach. And at that point, I message Stephen and tell him to go and use the toilet, because I know that I'm going to be in the toilet for about 2 or 3 hours.
It's so weird because it just comes on. It's out of nowhere as well.
Yeah,
we've been out shopping, and you could tell it's happening because
happened last Tuesday.
Because you stopped talking for a wee while.
Yep,
which is hard for Craig. He stopped talking for like a few minutes, and he was like just sitting back, and I was like, "You're fucking feeling sick, aren't you?" And so we just immediately went up the road, and that was you for 5 hours, just in the bathroom.
Well, so what happens is I have an hour before I need to go into the bathroom where I'm just feeling nauseous. Right. Mm-hmm. And to me, feeling nauseous is so much worse than being sick. Like, the nausea feeling is the worst fucking thing in the world. And so I'll have that for about an hour, and then about 55 minutes into that, I'll message Stephen so he could use the toilet, because I it's going to be 3 hours. And then I'll go into the toilet, and I'll put on either the cold tap or the hot tap, depending on whether I feel cold or hot. If I feel hot, I'll put on the cold tap, and it'll splash on me. And if I feel cold, I'll put on the hot tap in the hopes that it heats up the room a wee bit. It's just my thing. I don't know if it has any bearing on whether I feel better or not. But I do it. And then I sit on the toilet, and I have a bucket there, and I just wait for 3 hours. And what happens, and then I come out the toilet, I go to sleep for 2 hours, and I wake up feeling great. I don't fucking have any idea.
This happens regularly to you?
Two times a week. In the winter. Only happens in the winter. Doesn't happen in the summer.
Sheesh. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's fucking shit. It's brutal. But
maybe you know, you should have mentioned that when you did the epidemiologist, because then maybe like other kind of doctor type people who've been listening, and then they get in touch with you and sort of tell you've got a rare tropical disease. Maybe that'll happen with this. I think every podcast you do, you should mention it on the off chance that these person might be listening.
That's a good show, actually. I might do that. Mm-hmm. But I've had that for years now.
Good while. It affected your work when you were working with the...
Yeah, it happened at work as well. It happened one day at work. Sure. And I had to go into a work toilet, which was not fun. Mm-hmm. Considering I didn't really know anybody at that point. And then I had to just tell my boss, I need to go home, I'm dying. And I couldn't even drive my car home that night, actually. I had to get a friend to come and pick me up and take me home, because I was still faint. And I had to leave my car in Kirkcaldy, and then I had to get... Jock actually took me to get my car that night, actually. But after 6 hours, an hour before it, 3 hours in the toilet, 2 or 3 hours sleep, and then I wake up fine, and I'm starving. I just need to go and get something to eat, and I fill myself up with calories and sugar to get myself back to normal.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
So I think that might be an immune issue, but it didn't seem to impact COVID. Actually, I didn't have that situation the whole time I had COVID. No. So maybe there's a thing there where COVID cures it.
Yeah, a bit like the positive effects of smoking. Yeah.
I need to get COVID more often.
Yeah,
I'm not going to do that.
Okay. No, I don't do that. Okay, Myra Blake would like to know, has recovery from such a horrible virus changed your outlook on life?
Well, I've stopped smoking.
Fantastic.
So that's... I think it's pretty serious now, because like before, I would sort of sneakily think about smoking a lot of the time and try and like sneakily maybe borrow a fag, so probably like really sneakily do things, but I've never really had that thought since then.
Right.
So I think
and
it's
that's since October.
Since about October, aye.
It's been fantastic.
Pretty cool.
So that sounds positive, isn't it? It'll, good for your health and save you shed a load of money.
Oh, yes.
Aye. Saves me a shed load of money as well. Buying his fucking Bocky for him. I didn't really... I suffer bullshit less. Now I'm
right.
much more like... Well, it's affected me now, so I'm more like, it's more emotional, it's more personal when people say,
sure.
oh, it's made up hoax, people aren't getting COVID. Well, I fucking had it, so you're directly calling me a liar now. And so I suffer bullshit less. But since I took it seriously before, and I'm taking it seriously now, it hasn't really changed much for me. I've always been...
Yeah. We've always been skeptics anyway. So like the suffering bullshit thing, like it's maybe changed you a wee bit, but probably not that much. You've always been a skeptic at heart, and you're always kind of quick to say, that's done, nope, wrong. Like you're always kind of quick to do that anyway. Well, we both are. Aye,
which doesn't always pan out good for me, because I'm very stubborn. So I've had like death threats and stuff for like saying this shit, which is mental. That fuck saying bullshit, and then you'll be like, oh, that's bullshit, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna kill you then.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that's the lovely world of social media.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So that's good. So there's a couple of positive things come out. Stephen stopped smoking, and Craig suffers fools much less gladly.
Yes.
So it's nice to think that some good can come out of bad.
Definitely.
Final question, guys. Last one. Those are the benefits, features and benefits. So, final question from Bob Gillespie in Perth. He asks, this is going back to your expert knowledge that you've gained. Why are we still not using local contact tracers door knocking rather than call centre telephoning? And why are we relaxing restrictions for 5 days at Christmas and risking a massive increase in COVID infections and deaths of loved ones?
I don't understand the Christmas thing
either. Ones to finish
I can explain the Christmas one.
It's to allow people a wee bit of freedom. I do get that. But...
Should we answer the first one first? What was the first one again?
You go ahead, actually.
The first one, why are we not using local contact tracers, actually going door-to-door knocking, not door-to-door, but door knocking, rather than call centre telephoning? I guess this is the track and trace, you get...
Yeah, I feel like that's more inefficient. I think you would get through a lot more people phoning them than knocking on the door. And also, if you're knocking on somebody's door that you know for a fact has COVID, like you're then having to be PPP'd up to the fucking wazoo. Or is it PPE?
Oh, yeah, sure. PPE,
anyway,
yeah.
Yeah, you have to be fucking protected up to the wazoo. And I feel like that's just a more inefficient way to do it. So yeah, I feel like the contact tracing in terms of phoning people is fine. I just don't think they've done the right strategy for contact tracing. I think it should be a lot more aggressive. It's a lot more waiting for people to have the will to go and date as opposed to testing. Although saying that, speaking to the epidemiologist, she said that there's a specific time period that you should be tested to get the best results. So like when we had COVID, if you were to come up to our house on the Monday and then on the Tuesday we told you that we had COVID and you went for a test, you would probably get a negative test result. Because I don't know why, but you just do. And she said that the best time to get it was, I think, 8 days in.
6 to 8 days.
6 to 8 days in. And anything before that, you're more likely to get a false negative. So I don't know. Maybe my idea of a more aggressive test and trace is wrong. But thankfully, I'm not an epidemiologist, so I'm not making the policies for that. But aye. So I think, in terms of this conversation, that's the call centre thing is probably the best bet.
Fair enough.
And the second one was... I forgot the second one now.
I think you did the second one first. why are we? Oh yeah, no, we haven't. No, Stephen mentioned it. It's about relaxing restrictions for 5 days at Christmas. What's that all about?
Oh yeah, I think the logic of that is just police not being able to handle two things at once. Over the course of Christmas, people were already going to break rules, and so the police would have had to deal with people breaking rules, and then on top of that, the people breaking rules causing crime, because crime goes up at Christmas anyway. And because people were getting sick yet, that might have caused more people to break rules than normal, and then more crimes to happen than normal. So I think it was just a case of trying to keep people easy to control. Well, that's a conspiratorial.
Right deep state
Christ, fucking Illuminati's coming to control us. But I think that was the basic idea, was that they didn't have the resources to cover everything, so they make less things illegal and they've got more resources to deal with other things. I think it's a basic resource issue.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Right, I think also what we need to do here is, we're about an hour and a half late here, what we should have said right at the very beginning, but you guys could edit this in if you want at the beginning. This is a socially distanced interview. I'm about 10 miles away from Craig and Stephen. I'm doing this whole thing over one of those Zoom-type networking meeting software programs. So no COVID was transmitted in the transmission of this program. Right, anyway, that was our last question.
Well, we are in the same room. Right. Me and Stephen are in the same room, but we live together. So we're allowed to be in the same room.
I mean, that whole idea when one of you had COVID and the other one didn't, then trying to, in your house, I've seen your house, and your house is bigger than my flat, but still, it's going to be, Elizabeth and I had said this, my wife and I said this, if one of us gets COVID, the idea, the self-idea is going to be absolutely impossible. We've got 2 bedrooms, although one bedroom doesn't have a bed in it. Yeah. But even so, obviously there's one toilet, there's one kitchen, there's one telly. I don't think you guys have got a telly. But, you know, it's going to be as hard as you might, and even though you two are antisocial and try to keep away from each other, I would think it would just be impossible for one not to infect the other when you live in a wee house like you do, or a tiny flat like I do.
Yeah, I mean, even just if we could have 100 bedrooms, but we've only got 1 bathroom. We're still going to need to use the same bathroom.
We have to use the same banister coming down the stairs to go to the same kitchen. We have to cook and eat.
Yeah,
the toilet.
We've got 1 fridge and freezer.
1 fridge, freezer. It's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, so it was a Tory idea that you should isolate in the same house.
Yeah, exactly. This whole idea that people have got big houses, or even just a medium-sized house with 2 toilets. Once you've got 2 toilets or 2 bathrooms, then stuff starts to become, you think, okay, well, maybe I could, exist. You just chuck food into me, and I'll stay in this room. I'll go from this bedroom here to that toilet there, and have a shower and come back, and that's it. You potentially could do it, but if, like you said, if you've got 1 toilet, you've had it, mate. 1 bathroom, you've had it.
Yeah.
And these guys probably live in much bigger houses as MPs with their larger salaries.
Yeah, one stays in the West Wing, one stays in the right wing.
Although I guess we probably could get quite political now, because it's near the end. So if we were going to frighten people off of politics, it's too late. Because if we're that's it. Do it at the end.
Tory bastards, man.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Craig and Stephen, thanks very much. That's absolutely fantastic. We've answered everyone's questions, so you guys will be able to edit on. Be sure to subscribe to BTN Media with a bit of music and stuff at the